Good morning to everybody. Today we start with the second lab of the year, and in this lab we will start from where we left in the previous one. So we will use the first minutes just to recap what we did in the first lab. So let's start with the software. So we are going to NV5.3 and we are starting NV5.3 in 64 bits. And now you see it's opening the shell of the NV and now waiting for the software is opening. All right. So we have the layout of the software, and you see there's a general menu, a layer manager with different views, and we have more than one views, of course. And then we have also the toolbox part of the layout, where you have all the different information, all the different paths. Both the toolbox and the layer manager, as you can see here, can be detached. And the importance of this operation of detaching is just to have more space to display the images and see better the display. You see here we have also in the detach, we have the reattach button. So pressing on the attach, the window will be in the previous position. So let's start from what we left last time. So we are going to the file option. We are opening the Landsat 7 images. So we are opening as you see here as optical sensor in this way you see. And then we are selecting Landsat and then GeoTIFF with metadata. So we are opening the data with the same instruction of the first lab. So we are I'm going to select the data. So you see here I have in this position the Northwestern Italy data set. And you see here I have other folders, but in particular this file with this MTL sort of extension I have in the file that stands for metadata list. So I'm opening these things here, all right, and you see I can visualize the image over the screen. So in this case, you see the modality of displaying is something that related to the optical, and you see here in this case we have assigned to the display the visible bands. You see here, just clicking here, you see that in the three different channel, blue, green, and red, I have the association of band 1, 2, and 3. And in the layer manager, we can view more than one windows here. And so in order to manage a different display, I need the data manager windows. And this data manager windows, I can select that in different ways. The first way is just to go to the main menu, and you see here I have the data manager windows. And I can emulate that also with the button F4. And just clicking that here, you have the data manager windows, you see here. And you see here, we have all the different bands available. So you see we have the first 7 bands and also the other different bands I have here. So, for example, here, if you are going here in the layer manager and right clicking and removing these windows, you see that in the data manager the data are still there. So I mean, I'm only just removing the data, removing that from the layer manager and from the view, of course, but the data manager are still the data are still there, and you can check that in the data manager. So you see, in order to re-have the same view as before, I'm just clicking band 3, 2, and 1. I load the data, you see, with that button, and I am in the same situation as before. So just moving that, you see, I mean, data manager windows is very essential in the software because you can manage all the visualization and not only the visualization. So I can also generate another view, for example, just mixing to the red channel the band 4, for example, to the green channel, the band 3, and to the blue channel, the band 2, in this way. So this is a typical false color composite, what is called. And now you see, I can do another things. I can, in this case, you see, I can just check this box here, load in a new view, and then load the data. And you see another views in the layout of the software has been loaded, and now I have two different views in the same display. And you see here, they are different, the images, because we are mixing different spectral bands. All right, so just doing the same things as we did before. For example, just right-clicking, I can remove the view, you see, and I'm in the same situation as before. I can do also another thing, for example, here. I can select, in this case, you see, the band 8, okay, only one band. I load in a new view, I load this data, and when I'm associating only one single bands, you see, in this case, I see here, I can just remove these windows, and you see, I mean, in that case, I have the frame that is void in the views, but I mean, just redoing that things here, you see, I can also drag that in the view, you see here, and I'm going to in correspondence to the icon of the view, and you see that releasing and dragging and drop that in the view icons in the layer manager. I can do that in a very simple way. In this case, when I'm choosing only one band, the image is in gray tones. So you see here, if, for example, I have another possibility, so let's remove these things here. So if I want to, for example, selecting another bands, for example, I can go here just to expand the menu here in these windows with the band selection, and I'm associating, for example, here band 4, and you see that I can control these things here because in this band selection part of the windows I can strictly control the bands that I'm selecting. That is more simple, and I can load that in a new view, for example, and load the data. And you see that just clicking load in a new view, you see here, I just have another view, and I can add by the drag and drop the other in the panchromatic bands in the second view. So you see, I can manage different layers in different views of the same display. So last time we learned just to use the link. That is a very important command that we have in Amphi, and the link is used just to move multiple views, just moving one and moving the others accordingly if linked. So this is very important because, for example, here we have a different visualization of the same area. And so you see, in order to links, I'm going to the view, to the links, and we are using, in this case, the geo-link, in this case, and because, I mean, they are all geo-referenced, these different bands, or I can also use the pixel link if they are not geo-referenced, but now they are geo-referenced. So you see, I can link everything, the three different views I have, and this anchored means that is all the links of the other two are based on the first one. So I mean, having this pin, these green pins, the other will follow the position of the first one. So doing that, I just can click OK. So in this case, you see, when I'm moving, I'm zooming, for example, with the wheel of the mouse, I'm zooming in, all the other images will be zoomed accordingly. I can do that using all the views I have linked together. So I can starting from that one. I can use, you see, I can also add the overview, just simply checking that. I can pan, for example, in this way, using these particular windows. And I can go, for example, here, that is the airport of Genoa, and this is the runway, the airport, with the two different runways of the airport of Genoa. And you see, I can zoom on that. I can see Genoa Airport in different windows. I can move these views one after the others. I can do different things with these views, and I mean you can just play with this different view for your own. All right. Uh, the last time we just blocked this step, so now we can learn something more from these second labs, and we will add some more information. So in this case, I want just to explore the images. So the first things that I can do, so just starting from this airport and the airport of Genoa, I can, for example, yeah, I can just remind that this is the airport. So I want just to tag the image with some information, because just simply viewing that in photo interpretation, I recognize some features and I want to tag that in order to remind the position of these fields, in order to associate information to the position of particular features in the image. So in this case, I want to create some labels. For example, here you see, in order to have the information that this is the airport. So I can go to this principal menu, main menu, the Placemark, and I can add a Placemark. So you see, this is a general name Placemark 1. I can add here, I can write airport. In this case, I'm writing in Italian, Aeroporto Genova, and just having this information, you see, we have no information. So if I'm going to the menu, to the principal menu, you see, I have here in the list the Genoa Airport. So you see, if I'm moving in the image in another position, okay, in another place in another position of the image, for example, just to the coastline. This is a very famous place in Italy that is called Cinque Terre, five soils, let's say. So you see, I'm going to the Placemark and clicking on the Aeroporto di Genoa, you see the image will be centered in that position. So that means that the Placemark are fixed in the center of the views where you have been inserted originally. So you will have in this menu of the Placemark all the different position of things that you have recognized and that are important to remember where they are. All right. Following these Placemarks, I want just to show you another option that is related, that could be very important when you are searching for some places, in order to get some information about the places we have. All right. So what we can use in Envy, that is mainly Envy, I mean, dedicated to the image processing, is the connection to the Envy to some GIS software, in order to add some base map. And this base map is an option in order to add a vector layer, mapping layer, in order to better understand where this image is located in the reprojected space of the maps. So in this case, it's very important just to add this mapping information, because it's definitely help. And so doing these things, you can, for example, you see open in the main menu, open world data. So you have a list of different things, of different layers. For example, you see airports, coastline, countries, lakes, islands, populated place, roads, rivers, elevation, and so on. So we can select the all vectors. So you see here, this is a question. In order to select to load all the vectors, so there's a question in Envy. The extent of the selected data set are not compatible with the displayed layers. Would you like to change the coordinate system to match the data set you are opening and reproject and redisplay of layers? It's saying that you have another reference system while the vector layers are reprojected in another reference system. So if you want, if you are telling me that's okay, yes, here, so I will reproject everything. And in this case, you see, I mean, the visualization is set to the initial phase where you have all the image, and you see that in the layer manager, you have all the different layers available. You see, we have another view here that is available. The view, I mean, I overlap the vector in the view where I started the import. Of course, I can do that also in another view. For example, here, if I'm selecting that and you see that now I have the frame in blue, and now it's selected this view, I can do the same thing. So I can go to the main menu. I can open the Word data. Yes, okay, we reproject everything. And you see that I have the availability of the vector layers also in this first view. So I can do that for every single view. Of course, I'm not opening all in the view these things here. And you have to remember that these vectors layers are not in the software, but are available as maze map with a particular layers. For example, you see here, we are in the airport of Genoa with the Placemark, and you see here there are a vector layers that is something that is related to the coastline. Of course, it's a different scale, so it's not so precise in the representation. But of course, I mean, you have to remember that these vector layers are not embedded in the software, but is an online service that you are accessing to. So it means that when you want to load these things here, you need, of course, to have an access to internet. If you want to delay these things, you can right-click over particular layers or over all the view, and just to remove views of part of these vector layers, for example. If I'm going again to the Placemark in the Aeroporto di Genova, you see that I'm with the remaining two views, we are staying in the same position as before. In the right views, we have also the vectors. In the left, I don't have. If I'm getting out the check of the box, of course, I'm visualizing also only the things that I'm interested in. So in this case, you see, we started to perform some operation. We have some different layers, also vector layers. And so let's imagine now to use a situation where in the left layer I have a panchromatic image, the band number 8, while in the right views I have a false color image, while in red I have all the things, the reflected surfaces that are coming from the near infrared bands. In this case, I want to save the situation, freeze in that situation. How can I do these things? So in the main menu, you see in the file option, I can just save the situation, these particular views arranged in this way. And so if we need that, we can restore this actual situation. So I can go to File, and you see I can, in this case, save or export, for example, views in this case. And so I can also use that, for example, to insert that in documents. And I mean, in this case, of course, I can save that. And so in the main menu, in the File option, you see, when I want to save this situation, you see here I have all the possibility to open the recent views. You see I have a bunch of things here, and in this case, if I want to restart from this position, I don't need to reload everything, but I will restore the situation. I will open a sort of project where I will restart from the same exact position of this one. So in order to do that, I can go to the main menu, just you see, view and views layers, just to save the view and layers, and I can just name these views, and you see that the name is as an extension JSON. So in this case, for example, we can assign a new name. Of course, we can put that wherever you want. Now, for example, the name is a test with the extension JSON. So I can save that, all right? And now it's saved. And it saved the customization of these views. Of course, we are not saving the data itself, but I'm saving also only the way in which these data are visualized. So, for example, if I want to go in the same situation, I can start from here, and then, for example, I can close all the file. For example, you see here, I can go close all files. So I'm closing everything. So you see, I'm closing everything, and there's nothing more. I can also close a view. So I remove the view, so I'm in the exact position of the beginning. So now I'm going to view and layers to the restore option. You see, like here, I'm going to that position where I originally saved the test JSON. I'm opening this file, and you see it's restoring all the data. They are opening all the data. There's an error that is referred to something else. And you see, I'm in the same position as before. This is, I mean, in this case, a link is missing because, I mean, the information about the linking is missing. So I need to relink as before the two views and pressing OK. So you see now I am in the same exact position of that. And we have already the placemark. You see. So considering these two views, is just to explore the image in order to check if there are other points that we can annotate, for example, or we can label. So, for example, we can pan, for example, here, just taking the hand, and you see here I can move this image using the pan, and you see I can move, for example, along the coastline. But of course, I can also use the wheels in order to zoom in or zoom out. In this case, I zoom out. Or I can also use these icons that is called fly, that is emulated with the F7 button. There are the four arrows in the four direction. And you see, I can navigate the image simply clicking in a particular direction of these arrows. For example, if I'm clicking here, and if I'm clicking, I keep cleaning, press this button, you see, I can navigate without moving, but simply following the direction of the arrows. You see, it's very simple, it's very interesting. For example, I'm following some particular things, and I can navigate, for example, the rivers in a very simple way, just using this particular option, just keeping pressed the right button, the left button of the mouse. For example, if I want to go, for example, to Torino, I just habilitate the overview, and with the checkbox, you see it's around here. This is Torino. You see, this is the hilly part of Torino. This is the center of Torino. All right. These things here are the, I can move that here. These are industrial buildings. I'm just taking out the overview and zooming in. these enlarge zooming in buildings are the buildings, the industrial buildings of FCA, I mean the ex-Fiat factory, where they are building cars in this case. This is south part of Torino. This very large industrial plants, so I have recognized that I had a place mark, and in this case I can just put and write FCA, for example, Mirafiori, because this is the name of these particular industrial plants. So I can just click OK. You see, nothing happened, and you see I can zoom, I can move away from this position, for example, just zooming out and going to another place. And for example, if I'm going to the place mark and I'm just clicking on the FCA Mirafiori, you see, the display is centered with all the linked windows in that position. So you see, with the display mark, we can recognize and add information to the image. What are the other options now? The other option are the information we have here. For example, here in these different icons, you see, and we can start just to describe. You see, you have the icon of open, that is the same of this one. This is the data manager. You remember, very important Windows. And you can click on these icons, and this is the same from here, from the main menu. This is the shortcut F4, but you have also the icons. So 3 different ways to go to the same one. Here is ship to file, this option. This option is, you see, you can take part of this windows and save that in another file. This is not very important for us in this way. So I mean just a brief description. This is a very important icon that is called Caso Location, all right, that can be emulated with the Control-I button. And this, if you are clicking on that, you see we have these windows. I mean, the cursor is changing across in the display, and you have all the information about this particular cell that is pointed in the image. So you see, in this crossing signal, I mean, it's pointed in a particular position. So for example, if I'm going here, you see, I can read all the different information from here. For example, in the view number 1, I can read the position of this particular point, you see, and so I'm selecting a particular cell of the image matrix, and I can see, for example, here you see that I'm in the view number 1. That is the current, that is, you see that the frame is blue, so this is the selected one. You see also in the layer manager. If I'm selecting the other one, you see that now I'm in the view number 2. So let's go back to the view number 1, that is the current. So in the second lines of the cursor value windows, I have the position in latitude and longitude of these particular points, because the image, as we described before, is georeferenced. In the third row, so we have the same position in metrical units, all right? I have some more information concerning the facts that I have a particular code of this particular point, that is this MGRS positioning attributes. So every single point of the word can also be assigned to this particular coding, code, I mean, this coding system. And then I have also, I'm sorry, the projection, that is UTM in the zone 32.9 north with the ellipsoid WGS 84. So these are information concerning the georeferencing and the position attributes of the single cell. All right. In the second part of this windows, you see I have the name in the first line of the file of the band where that is loaded in this windows, the name of the data set, this one you see here. And I mean, the cell in that particular position here, you see in the file, I mean, in the position of the file, the position in the row and columns is in that position. So you see that is in position more or less 4081, 4172 for the row. Remember that the system is exchange. So the first position are the columns and the second one is the rows. So you see, this is the position of the cell in the image matrix, all right? And in this case, in more or less in the center of the image, data stands for the digital number that is associated to this particular cell. So that means that in that particular cell, in the image matrix, we have this digital number that is equal to 91. Remember that these values are ranging from 0 to 255. All right, if I want to see which are the values of the same cell in the other views, I can just simply select the values, the other views, and you see I will have the same information. So this image is coming from the multispectral data set. In particular, there are 3 different bands. The position is around 2000 because the geometric resolution of the two data sets is different. And you see in the last lines, in correspondence to the data values, I have in this case not only one single values you see here, but I have 3 different values. Why that? Because the data are mixed from the 3 different bands that are associated in order to build up a color image. So, for example, for the red channel, I have 115. For the channel red, I have 156. And for the channel blue, you see, I have 137. That turns into being more or less the same values, turns to be a gray value, so that is quite bright, all right? In this value, I can also here link the views. For example, I can do that also from here. And I mean, I have also some other information from here for the other icons. For example, from this cursor location value, I can, for example, copy some values or copy a position of particular cell. So, for example, if I'm going in this case, I'm copying the map value in this case. Okay, I'm storing these values, and now I have that in values. Okay, so in this case, I have also this possibility from these things that I can also display this information for all views. And you see, I can add all the information in one single Windows. You see, so I have the Windows 2 and the Windows 1 in one single Windows. So I have all the information in one single in the single views. If I re-click on these icons, I can use again all the information only from one single view. All right. So I can do some particular things. So as you see here, I can add or taking out these different things. Pay attention that this information of the cursor location value is particularly important in order to have quantitative information and radiometric information concerning the single cell, comprising the position of this particular cell in the different reprojected spaces we are using. All right. So, you remember that we have copy this particular information. So if we are closing these windows, for example, and if I'm going to the Placemark, for example, going back to to Genoa. In this menu, you see in the general menu here, I have also this information go to, or we can also enter the coordinates. All right. So I can, for example, use these things. I can add some coordinates in order to do, for example, clicking that, enter the coordinates. So if I'm using these things here and I'm using the paste, is not working right now to what we have saved, but I can just in this option just go to a particular system of coordinates. If I'm coming back to the go to, I can just write down, for example, the position of the image coordinates. So you remember that we have in this position more or less 2000 by 2000. So if I'm writing these things here, separated by commas, you see I can go in particular position. You see the FCA industrial plants. And if I have the cartographic coordinates, I can go directly there. So I mean, this is the possibility to go there for coordinates, row and columns, or two particular coordinates. Unfortunately, I don't understand really why it's not working that. We can do again these things here. So you see here that in these particular things, if I'm going to select the position, you see that we are in the surrounding of the position, so I can force the position to 2040, 2040, that is the center of these views. So you see, I can just force this position, so have just patience. Okay, 2040, 2040, here is this position. So in this case, the triplets of radiometric values you see here is 98, 37, 47. That are three particular digital numbers of the three associated spectral bands of the right views. So I can use that position in order, for example, to read particular the radiometric value. So let's close this cursor location value. Let's go ahead with these things, with these icons. So you see, these are the zoom option, and we already know this zoom. We can use this zoom or the wheels on the mouse that is more functional, and we can use this particular zoom to full extent that is emulated with the F12, in which I can have all the image represented in the same view, all right, with the maximum possible dimension. And this is the scale. I can also force the scale of the representation. So you see, I can set a particular map scale, for example, 1 to 500,000. This is the representation of this particular scale of the image. So I can force the scale. For example, here I have 2,000 and 100,000, or for example, 100,000. This is the scale, or if I can go also to 50,000 in order to check better, because I have a larger scale in order to check the heterogeneity. So in this case, I also the possibility to rotate the image. This is not particularly important for us, because in this case, I don't want to have these things, because we have a reference system, and you see we have the north arrow. And so, I mean, it's make no really sense to rotate this particular, this image in this way. Could be just something that you can use to insert output in papers, for example, but not really in this software. Here you see we have other icons, for example, arbitrary profiles, scatter plots, region of interest, feature counting tool, are icons that I'm not going to explain that right now, because in order to fully understand this function, we need some more information. All right, so it's better just to leave all these icons later on, because I mean that are used for more advanced processing and we should have some more basis in order to use that. But you see, they are quite simple, but it's better to do that. You see, here we have the annotations. So we can add annotations that are simply something that we can add over the image. For example, the text annotation. For example, you see here, I can just add, left clicking with the mouse. You see, I can just write down aeroporto in Italian, aeroporto di Genova in this case, or and consider that like a label. And you see, whatever we are writing down, you see here is in the layer manager with a new annotation and with the text. You see, all right. So consider that I'm not writing down these things here. I'm not erasing what is behind. It's only a label that is superimposed over the image. I mean, I'm not changing the original data. So if I want, for example, just draw a polygon. So, for example, I want to digitize the whole airport of Genoa with the runway. Okay, I can close that. I can close a polygon, and I can right-click with the mouse. With the right button of the mouse, I can accept, and you see now it's a polygon. And you see it's another polygon, so it's on another Windows, and you see that I have there in the layer manager the new annotation that is a polygon. This is quite important because just having drawn this polygon, I mean, I can, for example, calculate the area of this polygon. So, I mean, I can have more information over the image without, of course, having touched the original data of the image, because this is something that is superimposed. So I mean, just using these polygons, I can, for example, calculate the area of the runway of the airport of Genoa, for example. So it's there. So the managing of this annotation could be very interesting. For example, you can also, you see, I can add some geometrical elements. I can add some symbols. For example, here. You see, I can add some simple, just clicking here. And for example, you see, I have an undefined symbol. I can select that from a library. And for example, if I'm clicking that here on the symbol, I can just click on the right click and having the symbol. So you see, I can change the colors. I can change the properties of these things, the dimension, the font size, or whatever. And for example, here, like in a map, I can add all the different geometrical elements in order to have some different annotation that can help me to have all the information. I can also, for example, you see here, add some describing elements, for example, the arrow annotation, for example, or also you see here some pictures. For example, I have a picture took from the ground of the airport. I can add some picture, and in order to have the description, like for example, a sort of Google Street Map, for example, I can add some information. So now we know that we can add some information. A very important thing, just having finished the first lines with having all these icons left for the near future, I have these last icons that is just describing that there's a new version that is available of MV. I mean, here you have the availability of this version. This is not the newer one, and you see here that there are some other version that is available. And I mean, your license is not cannot be used for newer version. So, for example, here, if you are for example, are you opening this optical sensor in the newer version, you have the availability of new satellites that are being launched in the meantime from the last and the previous version of Envy. And so having the last version available is also adding some more information. What I want to show you is a very interesting thing that is the possibility in the views menu. You see here in the general menu where you can create new views. For example, here you remember we are adding new views that we can fool with some other images. And you see here we have the possibility in this particular option to define the position of the different views. For example, here in horizontal, you see we can place these things horizontally, and this is more suitable, for example, to display the airport of Genova because it's more or less horizontal, is a horizontal feature. But in these views, we have also, for example, the possibility not use too much views in the same windows. Otherwise, it could be tricky to use very small views. You know that here we can link the views, but what is very important is the last one, that is the reference map links. These reference map links that you can emulate with Alt-M. So you see, we have another views. There's a script error, but it's a bug of this version. Don't pay too much attention to these things. This reference map is another view. You see different views where you can have a base map just to understand where you are. So, for example, you see that in this blue part, you have the dimension of the windows because it's georeference. So it's reprojected on the maps. And for example, if you are moving that things here, and you can better understand where we are. So, for example, you see, if we are moving here in the image, you see also the maps is moving. You see here? So it's moving accordingly because, of course, everything is georeference. So, for example, you see, if I'm moving here and I want to, for example, to see where the Cinque Terre are, that is a very famous place, you see, it's more or less there. All right, so I'm searching that in the maps. So you see that I can go directly. I can fly because it's better in this way because it's more simple to move from here. So you see that in the fly option, the maps is not moving really accordingly because there's a bug. But you see here now, we are in that position. So you see we are in the position as before. This is the Cinque Terre region. So I have with this reference map the possibility to better understand where we are and also to extract information from the images because I have the maps. That is, if I'm going to, for example, to the previous placement, for example, the FCA industrial plants, you see here in the maps we are in the Fiat Group Automotive SPA, so FCA plants. You see here. But you see here in the switch base maps, I can also, change the base maps selecting from different things. For example, what is very interesting here, that I have many different options. For example, OpenStreetMap, that I think that you all know these things. And for example, here you see I have what is available in OpenStreetMap over this area. But if I'm going here, I can also use something that is very important. For example, I can use imageries. All right. In these imageries that you see are coming from Esri, you see I'm moving there, and you see if I'm enlarging these windows, you see that in this case I can this blue rectangle is corresponding to this part of the windows you see here, and you see that in this reference map link, I can zoom in, and you see I have the possibility to zoom in images that in this case could also not be only satellite images, but you see, just zooming in, I can access to very, very detailed data. And for example, in this case, we have aerial acquisition. I mean, from aerial platform, from airplane, you see that I have some much details. For example, you see here, I can just check that there are cars on the border of the streets. And of course, this is a sort of geometric resolution that is really much better of this particular image. So using these reference map links, for example, also these imagery with labels, where we have some toponyms. For example, here you have the label of these things in order to better understand where you are. But we can use these things in order to have more information. For example, also these topographics, you see, we have some other information. For example, the street name, for example, and so you can associate more other information to the things that we are using. Okay, in this case, you see here we have some new annotation. In this case, you remember, and these annotations are coming from the Placemark Aeroporto di Genova, you remember. So we have these labels, these polygons, and you see, if I am on the annotation, all these places there, these menus in the second rows are not available. When I'm selecting the images, you see that now I have also the second lines that are available. For example, here you can select the brightness, of course, of the windows of the display that you are using. For example, here you see I can have a more luminosity. Here you can change the contrast of the image, you see, and of course you can change your views, and you can change the contrast of the two different views. And you see that only changing the contrast, I mean, you can see some more details that were not really apparent before. So you can also to perform some other operation. For example, this function here, you see that are no stretch, linear, equalization, Gaussian, and so on. And we are not going into this function right now, because as these particular icons, we will talk about that in the near future, because you can also need some more information for this thing. So, I mean, we will display that before in the near future. So, for example, you can also here modify the sharpening or the transparency of the image. For example, you see here, in order to have something that is more or less transparent, in order, if you have superimpose some, for example, annotation, I mean, that could be of particular importance. And you see, you can also change the values and to have the same configuration. For example, you can also set the numerical values here in these windows there. For example, in the contrast, you see, we are changing that. We can reset, for example, the transparency before. We can reset to the original position all the different things with these things here. So you see, I'm resetting the situation, the original situation, and so I can just easily go to the back. This icons here, you see, is mensuration, is something that could be interesting. For example, when clicking that, you see, I can just, for example, I want to measure the length of the runway of the Aeroporto di Genova. You see here, and when close that, I'm measuring the length, and you see that the total distance here is around 3.5 kilometers. You see, this is, I need to accept, of course, with the right button of the mouse. Okay, I can also re-click and delete whatever. And when done that, for example, if I want to measure the length of the other runway, okay, I can zoom in and then put that, just accept that, and you see that is more or less 2 kilometers, all right? So I can also measure different profiles and just right clicking. I can measure polygons, and so the perimeters of polygons. I can delete particular things. For example, I delete that before. I can just change, you see, the different things. I can change the units. I can do whatever you want. You can just play with these things. So, I mean, I can measure whatever I want in this case. So, in this mensuration option, you see, when clicking on the mensuration, you see the cursor location value is opened. And you see, I mean, there are more annotation available. And you see that in the layer manager, I have this annotation there. And you see in the units, for example, here, I can change the unit system and I can play with these particular things, you see here. All right, so here is there's a long series of different things that I've done in these things. All right, so if I'm not wrong, you can also change the properties, of course. You see, you can change the colors of the lines, you can change the style, the thickness, and whatever. I mean, you can do whatever, more or less whatever you want from these things here. So this is not a tool that is particularly used during our labs because I mean it could be of importance in the very beginning phase of the analysis of the image, while you see we don't use that very much. All right, so on the views menus we are more or less okay. We are okay with all these icons. And so with these different menus here, we have more or less say everything. SUI display in this particular case, we have particular spectral library viewers, new plot windows profiles, but there are corresponding to the icons of the first lines, and also this cursor location value, and these things are not available right now. So for what is active, I say that we have some things we will do in the future. In the edit, you see, we can undo some things. For example, undo the polyline notation, the last commands. We remove the selected layer or layers. We can order the layers, sending that to back or to front. In the file, you see, we already just say whatever we need, the open and the open A's, the open recent, for example, the recent available data, the open world data, you remember that we can open these things. We can open remote data set that are connection to external database, and you can set these things here to the connection manager, but we are not using that. You see, we can create a new vector layers, new annotation layer, and you will see that in the future, region of interest and raster series, temporal raster series. We can, in the viewer layers, restore and save the layers as before. That could be very important in order not to waste time. If you are, for example, you are following this lab and you are interrupting and restarting, for example, in another moment. So, for example, as you see here, I can save these things with a new test. Of course, it's already there. You see that, I mean, it's already there. So, I mean, I need to change the name in this case. I'm sorry, this is something that is not working. All right. And all right, you can save the image, you can export the views in PDF or in other image format, only the views, so what you are is displayed right now. And that could be for having, for example, the PDF to have some more important. You have the data manager, you see here. And so, I mean, you can, it's very important windows, as I mentioned before, where you have all the different data sets that are already available right now, considering not only the raster data set, but also you see the raster layer. And then here you can close all the files, you remember. You have you can go to the shortcut manager, and you see that in the shortcut manager we have in the left part of the windows all the possible operation we have available in Windows. This is the list in alphabetical order. You see we have hundreds of different windows, and you can associate this particular operation to a combination of buttons. That could be interesting if you are performing the same operation different times. And you can also save that, close, and now what I want to show you is the preferences. Okay, let's check the preferences. You see, are quite important because the preferences are the system preferences that are very important because, I mean, you need to have some information about that. So you have, for example, the first one, the application, that, I mean, you have some more information that is, for example, automatically check the updates. For the data manager, you see, there are some options. For example, the fact that, I mean, when you are opening the image, the auto display file open is yes. That when you are opening an image is visualized in true color in 3, 2, 1 in this case. So I mean not in another composition, but in the true color composition. Clear view when loading new image, no. Load data manager when Envy launches, no. But for example here, for example, you see you can change these things here. For example, not true color, but false color, for example. So on the directories option, you see you have all the position that are pointing to the direction, to the directory where you are opening or saving the file. So I mean, you have all the information concerning the general display, and you see that there are some options that I'm not explaining right now, but I mean, for example, the zooming interpolation method, the default stretch type that are very important. I will explain that, and you can change, of course, that, but I will explain that in the next labs because they are quite important. And you see here, for example, the units, the system of reprojection, and something like. You have also, for example, here the not arrow that is here, for example, you see here. And so this is a symbol. I can change the symbol. I can add whatever I want. The overview, you see that the border color is that one. And the plots, there are some particular, these are diagrams that I can represent. This is a particular important thing, the pyramids, that in the sense that when you are visualizing image, in order to speed up the possibility to display the image, the system is building a pyramids at different resolution in order to set the appropriate resolution of the screen to a particular part of the pyramids. To the remote connectivity, for example, here you have some information. You have also information here for the annotation. I mean, the symbols that will be used by default. For example, in our case, we are using these particular characters with dimension and so on. And we can change, for example, the colors from here, the backgrounds. And I mean, I need to close that. Okay. And then I have also here, so we never use that things here that are particular information concerning, I mean, the usage of the memory on your computer. I'm not changing that because you are using your own computer, so I'm not touching that from here. And so, I mean, it's better not to change these things here. It's something that is related to the performance of your CPU, such as the localization, that, for example, here, in the localization, you are using this English localization because, I mean, there are no other menus in other languages. So for today, I think that is enough. for this part. So we can consider close these things here. And the next time we will use these particular icons here, and we will add some information concerning, for example, the region of interest, plotters, and so on. And we will have more information concerning, for example, the profiles, to have some information about the scatter plots, the region of interest. We are counting the features, and we will manage in a better way the different views we have. All right. So with these things, we can consider close these particular labs. So for today, it's enough. So we can close the software, so we can exit, and I thank you for the attention, and goodbye.